just walked in with hundreds of others. I mean, we're just a single person who thought, oh, I believe in this. I will take one step and then another step. And then we're sitting on the table studying. And then we were arrested. But the next day, when we saw the paper, it says headquarters of the rebels. I said, that's us? No, all we did was take a stand because we believed in it enough with other people to go do it.
Sounds like a slanted headline to me.
Right, right. But I also think that what's happened is that, and this is a story about our interracial relationship, and also talks about that arrest, is that because I was arrested in there, it helped me to stand up the next time. I mean, I've done solo pickets because I thought this is something I wanted to make a difference in. Writing those kinds of against the grain stories was hard. And I remember there was one thing in this article that he wanted to take out. And the paragraph was one about people who would shoot someone because of the color of their skin. And he said, that's too violent. I said, no, this happens. It happens. 100 unarmed black men and boys, young men, a year are shot in one way or another. And that's a horrible, horrible tragedy. What's happened more recently with Trayvon Martin and in Ferguson is that those were stories that came out. They almost bother me because there's so many dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens more. And in some ways, you know, Rosa Parks stands at the apex of hundreds and thousands of people who did similar things. And each of us has an opportunity in small and big ways to stand up.
Nonviolence. It's important to point out, Jean, that Dr. King's message was, we can do it nonviolently. We saw it in the picture now, show Selma gives a lot of that content. And she didn't try to insult or fight with the conductor on the bus driver. She didn't insult other people. She just said, I'm staying put, it's my right.
It's my right.
And, you know, she didn't even say, don't mess with me.
She didn't.
No inflammatory language.
No, she
just
didn't.
very respectful.
Very respectful.
But
and that
they had
willingness
it in
to do
because,
it.
presumably because they had these ancient, archaic racial laws that if you're of a minority black, you got to be in the back of the bus, and it was, you know, supposed to be an admission of inferiority. I guess that was supposed to be the symbolism and all.
Yeah. That reminds me of one of my students who did an incredible activity in her classroom. Now, she's a student teacher. She's not a regular teacher. She's interning. And they were studying the civil rights movement. And she decided that she wanted to use the story of Rosa Parks to help her kindergartners understand how freedom can be taken away from you. And she did things like giving half the class only one crayon on the other class side would have multiple crayons, and they're, you've taken away our freedom, you haven't given us enough crayons. But she wanted to put them in the back of a bus and take a school bus and put them in the back and talk about Rosa Parks. And I said, but kindergartners, a lot of kids, they think it's cool to get in the back of the bus. They don't understand the whole pictures. So instead, she put up signs in the schoolyard that said no kindergartners allowed. And
that sent a chilling message to them.
And by the end of her activity, they were tearing the signs down themselves. She'd gotten through to them to understand that this was wrong, and they took the signs down. Kindergartners, so they're not too young. No. And then my
nobody likes to be disenfranchised if you can't spell the word.
Right. Yeah. And then my son also, when he was teaching civil rights, he used our arrest as part of his activity, but he went all the way back, and he said, we've got to start the story with the individual being torn away from their land in Africa, being bound like cordwood and put in a ship. So he was also a student teacher when he did this. He got permission and he let the parents know. And he actually had the students come into the room one by one, bound him up and laid him on the floor. A real sense of being confined. And from there, then he said, okay, let's continue to go. This is a continuing struggle and it's not over yet. So many of my students think that we're done when we're not. And of course, some of the things in the news say that we're not done.
Let me interject something a little far afield, but not exactly.
Okay.
It has to do about feeling oppressed and a captive. We lived in Brooklyn on the second floor. In those days, there were screen windows, no bars on the windows. And little B. Lee was rambunctious, to use a word like explorative, somewhat like you.
It sounds like
it. And they
it.
were afraid when the adults' backs were turned or otherwise occupied that Lee might climb up a windowsill and push the screen out and go plop, plop, plop on the sidewalk below, one floor below, second floor. Stores on the main floor in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Anyway, they decided to put me in a playpen, and they kept me there almost to the age of 2, which is not considered cool or awesome. In those days, they didn't use those words, but it was not appropriate. In any event, I loved my late grandpa, Dave, and he was sitting in the corner there listening to the radio with the headphones, and I wanted his attention. I wanted to sit in Grandpa's lap. It was a nice place. He was very kind and tender. And so I called, Grandpa, Grandpa, but he had his earphones on and listening to the radio, news of the war, blah, blah, blah. And I felt I should be equally as important. And when I was chat to Grandpa, he should come and listen to me. So what did I do? I took one of the playing blocks, and I tossed it with expert pitcher aim, and I nicked him right in the side of the cheek. And he noticed what was happening. He took his earphones, he came, and he patted me, put it in his lap. And that was my first social action event in my life. I learned there's cause and effect. If you want something, you got to go out
sometimes you have to go
and
get
demonstrate,
right,
even if you're 2 years old.
Right.
And that was my moment of truth.
I did. Since you mentioned grandparenthood, I do have to show you this. This is a picture of me with 4 of my grandchildren. My children decided to all have children at the same. These are 7 months apart.
I wish the camera could do a close-up. Any possibility?
This is a magazine for multicultural magazine for young people, and I wrote in it for 6 years. And finally, I put them all into a book together. But I realized that because of the embeddedness of racism in our country, we need to get the children young. So I actually took some material that's in my textbook, Cultural Competence, a Primer for Educators, and wrote it for children. This is called A Blink of an Eye Racism, which is sort of a younger version of this material, and it's more general audience.
User friendly.
Yeah, it's much more user friendly, very readable. Each page is just one story. Are you white? Are you black? Talk about skin color. Children. Research shows that children begin to notice skin color and know which is which by about the age 3 or 4, no matter how much their parents are working to not make it so. And that's one of the saddest things, that it's so embedded in it's like the air we breathe. It's so embedded that most people don't even realize that it's happening.
I'm going to bring up something that flicks into my vacuous mind. Around the age of 3 or 4, you're taught to use crayons, Crayolas, whatever brand you use, and you're taught the different colors in the coloring book and all. Is there some way that coloring books or an optional coloring book could be invented that would use crayons in a positive way to take up an appreciation of different colors? I don't know, has that trick ever been pulled off?
Right. There are a lot. One of the books that I talk about in here is all the children are all the colors of the earth, which is a nice metaphor. And there's so much that can be done to teach children the value of differences early. But like unconscious bias and unintentional racism, unless people recognize it's possibly there, then they just assume that they don't have to do anything. In other words, people believe that the best way is to be colorblind and treat everyone the same. But the problem is that it's so embedded, we don't. We automatically react based on things that have come into our brains through the media, through advertisement, through conversations, through books, through who we see in different roles. You asked me a question way early that I didn't quite answer, which was what I wanted to be as I grew up.
Right.
And I wanted to be the first woman on the moon. And right now, I'm just now learning to fly an airplane, and I think there's only maybe two or three.
Have you mastered gravity yet?
There's only 2 or 3 black female commercial pilots in the United States.
Wow.
So my ambitions, what drew me at that age, was pretty much closed off for me. And you think, well, now it's open. Well, is it? I mean, we don't see the role models, so it's very hard for young people to aspire to a position when they see no one their color there.
It's interesting because I'm thinking back to 9/11 and how quite a few, so we call them Islamic extremists. Not all Mohammedans or Muslims are extreme, so I don't want to create that impression at all, but those who took lessons to fly the planes at 9/11 and all, who were, I think, went down with the plane as well, they didn't see any discrimination. I don't think that they were, as long as they could pay the money, they got the training.
Then. It stopped right after that, didn't it?
Well, now they're
it's a lot
screening
different.
it a little bit more closely.
Yeah,
They have to x-ray
it's
your
so
soul.
new. I know.
Okay. By the way, did you know that back in the 1960s, I was a reporter for the New York Voice, which was a middle-class black paper, and covered Dr. King's speech in Washington. And I actually interviewed Hubert Clark. He was the first black presidential pallbearer at the Kennedy funeral.
That's amazing. You've been in it for a long time.
Yeah, I started as a journalist from New York that don't talk that way no more.
Right.
I like to do the imitation.
Yes. I reported for the State and Mail as a correspondent, and I had a column in the Statesman Journal called Letters from Santiam Canyon many, many, many years ago. So I learned to write by being a reporter because the editor would take it and change
Looking
it.
back
so
at your career, what do you consider some of the unusual episodes you've encountered?
Well, for one thing, I have done oral interviews and talked about many of them. It's very hard to know where to start. What do you want? My writing,
What do you like to write about these days? What turns you on to a teenage term?
I'm trying to put my story together. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in 2007 when I was 63.
That's in East Africa, Tanzania.
Right, thank you. You're such a wealth of information. You know so much. I love it.
Man, I go back to Jomo Kenyatta.
Yeah. And my guide got ill. It was just my guide and I for the last couple of thousand, for the last 4,000 feet. And here it is, it's very cold and snowy, and my guide got ill, and he had to turn around. So I had to finish the climb by myself. And
that's what they call a natural high.
Yeah. Well, altitude besides the point. And so that whole idea of
throwing it. Climbing up a mountain? Most of us out there have never done it.
Well, actually, my guide said that it's easier. More people in their 50s and 60s are going to make it percentage-wise in the 20s and 30s. Well, I as an academic, I haven't checked that. But what he told me was that younger people were hurrying up, but where older people are going slowly, step by step. And so they were acclimating better. And that the mountain is given not to those in the best shape, but to those who were the most determined. And
determination. The number one nation on earth And the slowest nation is procrastination.
Yes, yeah, determination. And I go back to it. There's Rosa sitting on the seat in the bus, not going to move, and that image for all of us
so let's
stay
go to
firm.
the aftermath of the story.
Okay.
She didn't move her seat. She got herself arrested. She went to jail for, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks, whatever, before she was bailed out.
I can look it up real quickly if you like.
What happened? What the newspapers reported this, or
Right.
how did it get national publicity?
The boycott the next day,
Okay.
I thought was the most amazing thing.
So this is the Montgomery.
On the day of her her trial, December 5th, there was a handbill given out, 35,000. We are asking every Negro to stay off the buses Monday in protest of the arrest and trial. You can afford to stay out of school for one day. If you work, take a cab or walk, but please, children, grown-ups, don't ride the bus at all on Monday. Please stay off the buses Monday. And how long did that last? A long time.
So this is the support. This one lady did the act that ignited the fire of passion against social injustice and maltreatment of this particular minority group. Cesar Chavez did his in his own way. And she got support from the grassroots support from the community. So if there's something that we want, that we think is an injustice system, get your grassroots support, and then you'll get traction. Action equals traction.
Right. And in the small ways, too. So you're sitting in the lounge, and someone makes a statement, a negative statement about some group. And you only have 2 minutes, and your insides are just like, oh, I can't stand this. What am I going to do? Well, there's a 4-step process to address that I work with people in learning. And I honestly think it's the most important. You asked me what's something high in my career. I think it's the most important clue that I can give anybody to begin to make a difference in their worlds.
Which is?
Someone says that. The first thing you do is you calmly and objectively repeat what they said. And the second thing that you do is you say your own beliefs. The third thing, you say something positive about the group. And the last thing is you change the subject. So just say something negative about any group, and I'll do an instant, see if I can come up with one, just to demonstrate it.
I hate to be biased on camera or off camera.
Try it.
All Native American scalping